Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of On the Flip Side. The first Monday of every month, we talk about mindset. And every other Monday after that, it's any topic in real estate. My name is Diana Lizarazo, and today's guest speaker is Shawn Quigg. Now, before we get started, I want to share some exciting news with you. I have a social networking platform for real estate investors. If you're a mentor, if you're a professional, or if you are an investor, then this is the platform that you want to be on. Not only can you connect with people, but you get to learn about who they are, what are their strategies, what are their professions, how they can help you, how you can and better connect with the right kind of people. If you want to get to know more about our guest speaker, which is Shawn Quigg, then you want to get into REI FAM. I'll post it after this. I'll post the link there so you can check out his profile. You can see how he can help you, what type of experience he has in real estate that as a lawyer so that he can help you out. So today's topic is investing your money and JV trends. So if you guys are ready to get Shawn on, let's send him some thumbs up, some love, some fire, and let's get him on the stage. Let's see here. Oh, I can't invite you for some reason. What's going on? Oh, I did invite. Did I invite you? Did you get my invitation? No, I didn't. Hey Shawn, you actually have to be on your phone to do the invite. So either it's not working because you're not on your phone doing the live, or you have to update your Instagram. So let me know which one, or not let me know, just I'll give you a few minutes. I'll keep on chatting here. We'll wait for you. But you need to either update your Instagram if you haven't on your phone, if you are on your phone. And if you're not on your phone, then you gotta get on that phone. So now while we wait for Shawn to come on, because I think this is a great topic, and actually also to let you know, Shawn, at the end of this, he has some exciting news that he's going to be sharing with us. It's some really good information that he's going to be sharing with us. So lots of great stuff to hear from Shawn. Not only is he going to impart his knowledge, but he has some great stuff. Let's see. Are you on, Shawn? Oh, there we go. I think you're on, right? No? Oh, let me try one more time. It did the ring, but nothing happened. Trying that again. Sometimes it's very slow too. So while we wait for Shawn to come on, because this usually takes forever, let me know, what is your real estate strategy and how are you thinking to invest your money? Because right now we're going to get to, Shawn's going to tell us how to invest our money the right way, how to raise capital the right way. So for the investors, how to raise capital the right way, and also for ourselves who are money investor, who want to invest our money. Oh, it says you're unable to join. So we may have to, okay, let me send the invite again, but I have a feeling you may have to update your, oh, we're on. Hey, we made it. Usually it's a mission and a half to get on here. I don't know why. Thanks for coming on. I'm so excited for this topic.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I think this is a great topic. And like I was telling the viewers, I think at the end you're going to share some exciting news with us, share us what you're up to, which I think is everyone needs to hear about it. Because again, it's basically on topic. It's what you're up to.
Sure. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So before we get started, let's let people know, who are you? What are you? What are you doing in the real estate investing industry?
Sure. Well, my name's Shawn, and I do a couple of things in real estate or in the industry. A lawyer. I run a law firm that's only for real estate investors. It's a virtual firm. We help in Ontario largely. Whether it's buying, selling, refinancing into CMHC or whatever it might be, joint venture agreements, that sort of thing. So that's what the law firm Prosper Us Law helps with. And I also run a lending company. called upfront capital. And upfront lends deposits during the conditional period of a deal, so that the buyer is not tying up their liquidity into a trust account for that 60 or 90 days of due diligence. And I also invested. That's how I sort of got into the business when I went to law school. I bought a 5-bedroom house and I rented out the rooms to other law students, which was really great because I started cash flowing within a couple of months. And, like I tell everyone, one of the most important ingredients to getting through law school is beer. And cash flow gave me some beer money, which was awesome.
Great tip for all the university students. Now it gives them a reason to buy a property.
Right.
Awesome. So let's get started. So what should um, let's start with, I guess, the investor side.
Okay.
So how can people, I mean, I guess you may be hitting both, but how can people raise capital safely so that they're not breaking any rules and also making sure that they're making sure their money partners are taken care of?
Yeah, this is so timely right now, isn't it? With number of matters going on in the courts, and there's also some things that are not yet in the courts. I've got a number of capital raising matters that are sort of sticking around my inbox, and so it's a really important topic. And what's the number one takeaway I want anyone who's tuning in today or watching our replay is that there's nothing inherently wrong or illegal about raising capital. This is how business is conducted in North America and Europe. Businesses raise capital. Where things get a little sticky is this is a regulated process. It's regulated by a number of different pieces of legislation, but the primary one is the Securities Act. And the Securities Act, if you take a look at the first section, the defined term section, it sets out a number of different terms that is used throughout the legislation and then defines those terms. And the most important one is a share, at least for the purpose of today's conversation. And the definition of a share is so broad, it can really be anything. It doesn't have to be a share in a corporation. And so what to take from that is, if you're raising capital for a real estate deal, it's important that you get it right, that you make sure you stick within the regulations, that you get good accounting and legal advice, so that you are playing within the boundaries of what's allowed and what's not. And what that means is we can't just start posting our deals on social media. I mean, we can. It's just that it's likely going to violate some of the rules. And I can tell you, I have an investor in my inbox at least monthly with a letter from the Securities Commission saying, hey, we think you've raised capital without doing any of the proper registrations. So we need your books and records. We need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. It's a very scary letter to receive. And it's scary for me as someone's counsel, who is getting this letter and saying, this is problematic. We should document first before we went about raising capital. And so the important takeaway today is you can raise capital. It's just that it's a regulated process and there are steps to follow. There are different structures. There are different ways to do it. We can get into some of those ways today, but you gotta make sure you're playing within the lines. Otherwise, you could be in serious trouble.
Yes, yeah, that is definitely, if you're getting a letter from securities, that is a very scary thing to be a part of. So, what can people do to make sure they're not getting those letters?
Well, the first thing to do is to talk to a couple of people on the power team. Three of them, really. Number one is accountant. Or 1A is the accountant. Raising capital can have adverse tax consequences to both the people who are investing the money and to the person raising the money, the proponent. And so we want to make sure that we do things in a way that doesn't give us a tax bill that we're not willing to pay. Now, no one likes paying taxes, but that's a reality of being in this country. And so we want to pay the least amount of taxes that is legally permissible, right? So we want to engage an accountant on some advice there. The second thing you want to do is talk to a lawyer. And that lawyer is going to help you understand what particular structure might be best for what you're doing, from both a compliance and a regulatory point of view, from a cost and return on investment point of view, right? And so we got to make sure that you're doing things that meet the regulations and still permit you to do what it is that you need to do. And the third person you want to talk to is a mortgage broker. Most of these deals involve a component of debt financing and a component of equity financing. And when we're talking about raising capital, we're generally talking about equity financing, where investors come in for either a projected annual return or for a share in the equity in the deal overall. But when we're talking about the debt component, which could be 60 to 75, 80% of the actual purchase price of an investment, then we want to make sure that we're working with a mortgage broker who understands capital debt raising from a larger point of view, right? This isn't, if we're raising capital in a regulated process, it's probably not for a duplex conversion. This is probably for a bigger deal. And the structure that is going to carry the asset on a go-forward basis is going to be the debtor on the mortgage. And so it's important that we connect with our mortgage broker to make sure that they understand that there's going to be some form of capital raising structure and that they know how to sort of position that to the various lenders they're going to go to, so that we're not committing to a deal that we don't actually have financing on.
Yeah, yeah, that's very, very true. And I feel like we've seen, especially because of the changes of interest rates, I think you're seeing a lot more of those kind of problems happening because people just didn't, I don't know why people didn't think that an interest rate hike would make an impact to their income or to the like what they qualify for.
Well, yeah, that just goes to show that this isn't just an easy thing to do. Real estate investing is not easy. It might be simple, but it's not easy, right?
Mhm,
It's still a formula, whether it's $100 or one. It's
mhm,
still a very similar formula, but that doesn't make it easy.
mhm.
And you and I both saw a big push to real estate investing back when you couldn't lose, right? 2020, 2019, 2021. And a lot of people got in with the proverbial rose-colored glasses, right? And, in hindsight, thinking that it's almost inevitable that there's an interest rate hike when interest rates are at 1%, seems almost like trite. Like it would, of course it was going to happen. But at the
Yeah.
time, it didn't really seem like it was going to happen until
Mhm.
COVID. And so, all of this is to say that a lot of deals got entered into, and those deals aren't necessarily the best deals, or didn't necessarily have the stress testing from an investor point of view. And by stress testing, I'm not necessarily referring to the bank's stress testing. I'm talking about stress testing your investment, right? What happens if the property tax goes up 10%, which is something that's happening in London, Ontario this year, and a lot of other municipalities? What happens if the interest rate quintuples, as it happens to have done since then? Uh, and so, there wasn't a lot of that. And now
Mhm.
we're starting to see some of these deals come back, and they're not great.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, there was, or even different exit strategies. A lot of people went in with only one exit strategy, and then when things change so drastically, you realize other exit strategies are actually needed.
Yeah,
Or
not every, not every flip is going to work out, right? I've got one on the go right now.
Mhm,
It was a duplex conversion flip, and for a number of reasons, including being defrauded by our contractor, and a timeline that went from 3 months to 11, we can't sell. We would take too big of a loss. So we should have
Mhm.
finance closed this week and be stabilized. And
Mhm.
now we can hang on to it till we can recover what we've lost.
Mhm. Yes, yeah. And sometimes like that, if there's no exits, other exit strategies, sometimes the final is losing all that money and just selling. So it's
Yeah,
like knowing the steps that you can take so that you can pivot at any point is so important. Now,
that's
so
right.
for the people that have money, what would you recommend that they do or they check to just make sure that the people they're partnering, like what they should be checking so that when th're partnering with people, they're not so worried.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, like it's good to be worried, or at least wary, or at least um, want to almost go back to the stress test. We want to stress test who we're investing in because
Mhm.
you know, like you know what Mike Tyson said once that one time, right? Like everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face,
Mhm.
and that saying goes pretty well in real estate because I don't know about you, but I've never had a single real estate project go according to plan ever
Oh
once,
yeah.
and that's just the way it is in this industry, and that's okay, right? But if
Mhm.
I'm a money partner, then I want to know that my active partner can actually handle the ability, or can handle the change, can handle the adversity, and can actually get through and solve the problems, whatever they might be.
Mhm. So what kind of then you're basically, so what kind of questions would you be asking your active partner, if you were the money partner, to be able to get to know them better? What would you request from
Well,
them?
number one, I'd want to see the deal itself, right? I don't want to just hear what your projected annual ROI is. I don't, obviously I'm interested in that, but what I'm really looking for is what are their assumptions? How have they underwritten this deal? Is it sound underwriting, right? And so, we hear a lot about passive investing, but it's not that passive, right? It means, yeah, we're not taking 10 calls, but we got to make sure that our proponent is actually putting together a good deal. And not every deal is good. And not every deal that looks good on paper is good in reality. And so I want to understand what the assumptions are. What are the reserves, right? What's the maintenance reserve? What's the capex reserve? What's the vacancy reserve? Does the vacancy reserve meet or exceed the vacancy rate in this particular area that we're investing in? Um, I want to also know about this person's experience. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't invest in someone with no experience, but let's start with people who do have experience. I want to see what they've done, what they've accomplished, where they've succeeded, where they failed. Having a failure is not a deal breaker.
Mhm.
What is if they didn't learn from it, right? Because we either win or we learn, and so if they've got experience and they've had a failure or something didn't work out, I want to know what they learned and how they've applied what they've learned so that that mistake's not repeated. If they don't have experience, I want to know who they've got helping them, right? I don't necessarily want to invest in someone who has no experience and no mentorship or guidance. And if they've got mentorship and or guidance, then I want to understand a little bit about those people. Are they in it for the right reasons? Are they coaching to make money, or are they coaching to help people and as a result make money? So these are some of the things as a money partner that I'd be looking for. I'm also, I might do a little bit of digging into the uh, active partner themselves. I might conduct a litigation search or a bankruptcy search or a couple of other different searches that your lawyer can help you with to make sure that there's nothing going on in the background. And you'd be surprised, Diana, what you can find with a couple of legal due diligence searches.
Yeah, yeah. Even I think one that I personally like is I like getting their credit report. Because in there you kind of get to know, are they even good at managing money?
That's right. Right.
So so I really like that one too, because don't get me wrong, there are people that may have low credit reports and maybe they are good and they just made mistakes. But I feel like even in that situation, you can see those trends. Like I've seen where there's people you saw that they've done mistakes in the past, but it's been like in the far past, maybe it was like 5 years ago, and you can see that, they fixed up things. So you can see they're learning, like you said, from their mistakes. So yeah, that's one thing that I also really, really like. And yeah, and then like you said, just understanding the project very well. Because yeah, like you said, I think people always think being a money investor is passive. Is passive to the point that once you give the money and then you're waiting for the money, but even still then you want status updates from them. But the beginning is so important. Analyzing the deal and really understanding, making sure the ins and outs of it is so important. All those exit strategies, what if something happens? What's happening to my money?
That's right.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and we're seeing the results of not undertaking this due diligence or not having
Mhm.
a full comprehension of what's happening. And as you know, there's a pretty big case in the news and in the courts right now, and you know I'm hoping for the best. I have a number of clients that are caught up in it. It sounds like things are have a chance of working out decently well, but we'll see.
Hopefully, hopefully. So let's talk about, because I think this is probably, I'm assuming, let's get into the JV trends.
Yeah.
So what kind of trends are you seeing from this? Because this is like from all this that's happened, I can tell you one thing that I'm assuming that you're going to probably talk about just from what I've seen in the past is super vague JVs. And then when you get screwed over, you don't have enough to do even if there's like a swing, or at least people don't know their roles.
Yeah. Uh, there's I alluded to this earlier, but largely I'm a transactional lawyer, right? I help people close deals and do deals, and that includes doing JV deals. But lately, I have found myself doing more dispute resolution than I ever thought I would ever do. And most of those disputes have to do with joint ventures. And what I've what I've learned, what I've come to see as a result of trying to help people avoid litigation, because litigation, listen, if you got to go there, you got to go there. It is time consuming, it is very costly, and the only winners are really the lawyers there, which is kind
So
of
what's good for you?
well, not me. Like I'm not a litigation lawyer, so
Oh,
I'm
for the
trying.
litigation
Yeah,
lawyers.
litigation lawyers. I'm trying to help people avoid going to court, so that I can create that impact. Right, instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars on litigation, you might spend a few $1,000s resolving it in advance, which is much preferable, much cheaper, much less time consuming, and that's generally what I've been helping with. When it comes to JVs, there's one underlying theme, and that's the cash flow just isn't what it was, and now some of these projects are cash flow negative, and that's problematic for a money partner who was enjoying good returns for a bit, and but now isn't, and
Mhm.
there's I advise my active partners that they really need to make sure that when they do business with a money partner, they've got to make sure that this person is a person who can handle adversity, and the same goes the other way, right? Like we talked about when we're picking active partners to invest in, they got to be able to handle adversity too. Otherwise, you get this dispute resolution process, and you know contracts are getting blown up, and deals, money, equity is evaporating, and
Yeah,
that's
that's very true. And having those conversations before signing the JV partnership is so important because basically most likely what happened is only the good scenarios came up. No, never talked about the bad ones, which is basically now you're trying to help resolve those types of things for them because the problem when you're doing that now is that you're pissed and angry. So I feel like that conversation just becomes so much harder, and each side is only looking at their side because they're so stressed and irritated of what's happening. So even you don't have that. I feel like when people are angry, you can't look at the other person's point of view. Whereas if everything was amazing and good, and you're just talking about these scenarios, you I feel like you'd be hearing things better, and then maybe like that you wouldn't really need mediation because everything is ironed out.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. You know, a joint venture agreement is really just evidence of our meeting of the minds. If you and I are doing a deal, we've come up with the deal already. We've talked about it. And so the JV agreement is just the evidence of that agreement. And it sets out a number of things, and to your point, it's so easy to talk about cash flow and talk about equity gains and mortgage pay down and the vacations we're going to go on. Like all of that's easy.
Yeah. The fun stuff is easy.
No one, very few clients show up saying they've already come up with a plan about what's going to happen if someone dies.
Hmm.
And, that's one of the questions I ask. Usually jarring, but the facts remain, in Canada, the death rate is 1 out of every 1 person dies.
Hmm.
And as a result, we've got a plan for when it's going to happen, right? So, there are other issues like incapacitation, right? If you get hit by a bus tomorrow and you no longer have brain capacity, but you have a contractual obligation to do something, well, it doesn't seem too fair to hold you to that. But at the same time, you agreed to do it. So that's why we set out a plan. And I said a JV agreement is evidence. It's also a roadmap. A well-drafted joint venture agreement sort of tries to come up with every possible thing that could happen and then creates a solution, a predetermined, agreed upon, so that if you want out early and it's not for one of these 4 reasons, then you have to do this, this, and this and pay for this. So
Hmm.
now, if you decide, well, in the circumstance, we couldn't have foreseen this, and maybe that's not so equitable, both parties can agree to change the rules. Great. But the rules are for the event that we can't. Set a baseline. Those are what our rules are. Those are the agreement. And then we work from there.
So how detailed would you get in the JV agreement, let's say related to, would you, or even, is this even something you add in the JV or would it be outside? Would be, the roles and responsibilities between the money partners and the active partners?
Oh, that's right in the agreement. And it's important that it's dialed in. You mentioned animosity before, and animosity usually comes from unchecked or unmanaged expectations. And sometimes unmanaged expectations are really the result of poor communication.
Hmm.
And communication can be as simple as a vague JV agreement, right?
Yeah.
If we say, hey, Diana, you're the active partner and Shawn's the money partner. And that's all we say. Well, what does active mean? What does money mean? You know what those words mean anecdotally, but what does it mean in the context of a contract? That's up for debate, right? And that when you don't get specific and you don't get intentional about what you're putting into the contract, that means a judge or an arbitrator is going to figure it out for you. I'll tell you, you don't want to leave that.
100%, completely agree. And it's something that I saw a lot of. I saw actually one time that the money partner got left with the house. And I went to what is in your JV agreement because it was like, I can't really speak to anything other than what did you guys agree to?
Yeah.
And there were no roles. It was just money partner and active partner in the agreement. And I'm just like, but so you haven't even defined what that means. So to me it was now you guys just have to talk it out and like hope for the best that
Yeah.
you're both listening to each other, or like you said, like going to getting counseling and having someone to help you talk it through and figure it out because you know until you don't know what those roles are, what can you really do?
That's right. And once you have a conflict, it's too late. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. You have your point of view, they have theirs. And
Mhm.
if you can't agree, then you've got a dispute. And too late then to start agreeing on what the terms mean or what they
Yeah, and I feel like once you see red, some people can't stop it, you know?
it's hard.
And
It's hard.
and it's just like it's almost done, you know, and then
Yeah.
it's like where you really you need to pay people to help you figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And it can all be avoided, right? I tell you, a JV agreement, there's a little bit upfront cost, right?
Mhm.
No matter whether you work with me or you work with any of the other lawyers out there who are competent in joint venture agreements for real estate investors, and there are a handful of us, it's a really cheap insurance policy. I can tell you, I have a client who was facing a possible $200,000 loss, and he was the active partner. It's not even his money. He
Oh,
would have had to have come up with it.
oh wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very scary when you don't have the rules that set out so that everyone's aware. Like
Yeah.
you said, probably never thought of that scenario. And then you find that afterwards, you're like, where do I come up with that money?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a problem, right?
Yeah. Anything else that you would like to talk about for the JV trends or even just raising money?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of discourse about promissory notes, and there's one thing I've been engaging on this sort of public service announcement type campaign about promissory notes, and it might be just a little bit different than you might expect. I don't actually take a position on whether they're good or bad. What I really want is for people to understand what they're getting into, because promissory notes can be great, and for a long time they were great. Right now, as we're seeing equity evaporate and values drop, you know, the ability to pay back promissory notes is becoming challenging for a lot of people. But they can offer a great return, a better return than a mortgage. At the same time, you don't have anything to hold on to in the event that something's happening with the property. And so, I don't really take a position. But what I do want to comment on is a term I see very frequently in a promissory note, which seems like it has a bunch of strength, but is actually, in reality, pretty useless. And that is the idea that if a borrower defaults on a promissory note term, they can register it as a lien against title to a particular property. In Ontario, without proper documentation, this is not feasible. It's a completely useless term. And it's useless because only lawyers can register mortgages on title. Actually, let me back up. The right to register a lien arises largely out of statute. There is no statute that governs registering promissory notes as liens in the event that a loan is not paid back. Right? If you want a lien in exchange for lending money, then you give a mortgage, right? Or you get a mortgage, depending on your perspective. And mortgages are only allowed to be registered on title by lawyers licensed in Ontario. The rules governing registration of mortgages for lawyers are such that a lawyer cannot register a mortgage on title without a particular document called an acknowledgement and direction signed by the borrower. And the borrower must have received independent legal advice, absent some certain circumstances, about that mortgage. So you can probably see where this is going. If I've signed a promissory note saying, hey, Diana, if I don't pay you back this money by March 31st, you can register a mortgage on title. And then you bring that on April 1st to your lawyer. And your lawyer's going to say, well, where's the acknowledgement and direction? Because I am prohibited from registering this promissory note on title without that A&D, as we refer to it. Which means you got to come back to me and ask me for an A&D. Guess how motivated I am to sign that. So, if you're going to have that as a clause in your promissory note, come talk to me, because we will put you in a position to be able to register in the event that there is a default.
And so when they're doing a promissory promissory note, they would also need to also sign that A and D form, I guess is what you're
That's
saying.
right.
That's interesting. I'm surprised that the lawyers that they do it with wouldn't do that because don't, yeah, wouldn't think to put that together also.
I mean, we're all learning things as we go, and promissory notes weren't really, and payment of promissory notes wasn't really an issue until recently, and now it's really coming through. So there's being more attention paid to it by the legal community that are, and it's a small legal community helping real estate investors, and this is what we're seeing, and I can't tell you the number of times I've seen a promissory note with this clause or something very similar to it. I've had to break the bad news, like, sorry, but we're going to need to do some things to get this done.
Mm-hmm. So, but then for just to understand the difference between the two, because for example, if a contractor doesn't get paid, they can do a lien. That's,
Right.
I guess, a different, what's the difference between that compared to, like, why can't it be that kind of, let's say, lien, or what makes them
Great
different?
question. Well, I mentioned earlier that lien rights, the right to register a lien, arises largely out of statute. Right? And in Ontario, we have the Construction Act. The Construction Act governs the relationship between owner and general contractor and subcontractor, and all the way down the construction waterfall. When it comes to not paying a contractor, and the Construction Act says that if certain conditions are met, we won't go into those, but if those conditions are met and payment is not made, then the contractor has the right to register a construction lien on title. So that is a statutory lien right? The statute being the Construction Act. We don't have legislation about promissory notes. We have legislation about mortgages,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have legislation about promissory notes because promissory notes are really just private contracts for lending money.
Mm-hmm.
Highly unregulated space.
Yeah.
But construction and construction liens, very regulated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great to know. That's good to understand the difference. And I guess that gives people more clarity and understanding even the differences between the two, or why you can't do a lien, or how to properly set up a lien or for a promissory
Yeah.
note.
Well, the key is really just talk to someone who gets it, right? There's a few of us out there, whether it's, if I'm not the taste, then there's a few other lawyers out there that are skilled and apt at this and in this industry. So reach
Mm-hmm.
out and
Yeah, and I'd also say if it's your first time doing it, I mean, the first time doing it, you're getting into the investing world, pay for it. It's like you're paying, either pay to learn the knowledge or else you're paying for the results of not paying for that knowledge. So I feel like, I don't know why people get so scared about paying for that knowledge, because it's like if you just want to go and get a consult, then just get it, because it's like you're saving yourself, and especially if you're going to run it as business anyways, it pays off in the end. It'll pay off after a few times of doing prom notes or mortgages or whatever. It'll pay off in the end.
you're right. I mean, it it's sad to see sometimes, when, $500 or $1,000 might have saved tens of thousands of dollars later on. But a lot of people think, this will never happen to me. And let me tell you,
Yeah.
that's great until it does, right?
Yeah. Or they just think like, oh, I don't, which I find is so strange. Oh, this is so much money. I saw, so it's a bit of a change, but still the same thing in the sense of spending the money. They find in their inspection report for renovations that the roof has to get done. They decide to ignore that, not get the roof done, do the interior, and then what happened? They had a huge leak and they had to redo a huge portion of it. So something that was like, and yes, a roof is like probably, let's say, $10,000, but spent much more than $10,000 to have everything fixed again. It's like the same thing in different areas. It's just like, just do it the right way first. Go get a consult. And the funny thing was the contractor didn't even know that this was something that needed to be done. Because if they said like, oh, we need to get all these things done, let's say the roof, contractors know, well, I'm not starting any work until you get your exterior work stuff done because that's obviously going to impact the
Yeah.
inside, you know? So it's just like sharing that information, all that, like if you don't know things, sharing that information, like you said, like the lawyer, mortgage broker, like if you're new at things, just share all that information with everyone. So you have all the information you need to do things with your power team, with all that information you need so you can make it successful.
Yeah, that's right. You know, the very first lesson I ever learned in real estate was if you try and save pennies, you'll lose dollars.
Yep.
And I tell you, I continue to learn this lesson, and I will learn it for a lot longer. But it is sage, and if you try, it's just flat out true. If you try and save pennies, you lose dollars.
Yep, completely agree. So now tell us more about your business. Let's close up with learning more about your business, what you're doing, and how it's safe for people
Sure.
to get
Okay, so we're talking about upfront
involved.
capital. So upfront capital is a deposit lender, and we help uh, businesses, generally real estate businesses, or people buying companies or whatever it might be, with their deposit during their due diligence period. So this is for larger deals, people doing development or buying large commercial multifamily, or whether they're buying shares in a company that owns land or whatever it might be. What we've seen is that generally these deposits are large, right? 100,000, 250,000. We have a deal now for $1 million deposit on a $60 million deal. Like that's substantial. And these due diligence periods are 60, 90, 120 days. Investor money is not keen on placing deposits because even if that money goes into a lawyer's interest bearing trust account, that's still not a very good return. In fact, with inflation as it is, it's a loss. And so what that leaves is the project proponent having to shell out the cash for that 60 to 90 days. But that's a lot of dough to be sitting in a trust account doing absolutely nothing, especially if you're running a business or a small to medium sized business.
Yeah, and
Where
the businesses can be months for due
Yeah.
diligence. Could be a year
So
even.
while we've seen a year, we have seen a year, and it's a lot of liquidity to have tied up when you've got working capital needs, when you've got to pay for things like engineers, consultants. If you're buying land to build on, you've got to get geotech and surveys and a bunch of other consultants in Enviro. If you're buying a land, or if you're buying a large commercial multifamily or an industrial commercial building, you've got to bring in roofing people, electrical people, building systems people. You probably have to do environmental. So there's a lot of things that cost money. And if your money's tied up in a trust account, you can't use it. So what we do is we lend the deposit during that due diligence period, which allows you to use your money to actually do due diligence and then raise enough capital to reimburse us for the deposit once you're ready to go firm. So if you're ready to go firm, you're ready to waive your conditions, you pay us back, and then you get to closing and close.
Now, for the money partners who want to invest, I guess first knowing who can put their money into this, but also what makes it safe for them. Like, what makes it safe for them that they're not going to lose this money in the
Very
deals?
good. So we work with a number of financial partners. And if anyone who's tuning in today wants to have a conversation about what that looks like, I'm happy to have one. So what the real security blanket is for this transaction, well, there's really two. Number one, the money never goes to the borrower. It only goes to their lawyer. So this money only sits in a trust account, which means it can't really be absconded with. You always know where it is, and it's not going anywhere. The second is our deal structure, the way in which the way in which we underwrite the contracts that we lend on, meaning the agreements of purchase and sale, are such that it is virtually impossible to firm up the deal without the loan being paid back. And that's protected by the borrower's lawyer's undertaking. So if we're not paid back, then we likely have that lawyer's errors and omissions insurance, and the money's still in a trust account. We also have a number of other sort of deal documents that put us in a position of control if we ever need it. We don't ever want to use it, but if we have to, we will. But ultimately, in my opinion, this is a stronger and more secure product than a mortgage, because while a mortgage gives you equity to go after and a predetermined legislative route to go through, a contractual route of power of sale, this is not something that you would need to really do here. In this case, you would see your money sitting in a lawyer's trust account, which means you
Mm-hmm.
always see it. It does, and it doesn't matter how good the deal is, because the loan is paid back before the deal goes firm or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really great. That's a really great solution because, like you said, as an investor who's wanting to buy a property, exactly what you said, you're going to want to use your capital to actually do the due diligence and not have to worry about it sitting there doing nothing until you're ready to actually get things going. So I think that's an amazing approach that you guys have come up with. And it's like that. It helps both sides, and then it's good because it is basically a promissory note, but it's just like a secure way because, like you said, it's in a trust, right? Because that
Yeah,
is a promissory note, but it's just in a trust. So, and obviously, like you said, you have the legals there to save it, and which what we spoke about with JVs, I'm sure you're following it. It's following the same, is that you went through the different scenarios that can really come up in a due diligence period to cover all your bases to make sure that like you said, it's virtually impossible to lose your money.
yeah. There's really absent fraud, which is not really foreseeable, but absent fraud is pretty tough for our money to disappear, which is why our money partners like working with us.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Shawn, thank you so much for coming on. You always provide such insightful information. And if you guys want to see his profile, like I said, it's gonna put it on the link. He's also gonna be tagged on here. So if you also just want to message him on Instagram, he will be tagged on here. So if you want to just keep on track of what he's up to, contact him. He's gonna be tagged, and his link for REI FAM will be there so you can see what else he's up to, what other things he works on as a lawyer. And if you love what you heard from me and you want to stay up with what I'm up to, then definitely follow me too. Shawn, thank you so much. It was so much fun to chat with you.
Diana, thanks. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Bye, Shawn. Bye, everyone. We'll see you all in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.